for stocks, but maybe something will work later. Let's get our comments going, and then we got a show. The show that you deserve. Do 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 do. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams, and you've never had a better time. But if you'd like to try to take your experience up to levels that nobody can even understand with their tiny, shiny human brains, for that you need a cup or mug or a glass of tankard, chalice, a stein, a canteen, jug, or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure of the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip, and it happens right now. Go. I hope you are doing that at home with your child or your grandchild. Gotta start them early. Well, I wonder if there's any new science about the benefits of coffee. Yes, turns out there are. According to something called In My Bowl, which doesn't sound like a good name for a publication, In My Bowl. Apparently, coffee can help with erectile dysfunction in men. So that's why you should always have a donut with your coffee. Everybody catching up with that? All right. Got to bring a donut. All right. I thought it was funny, but it's still early. According to the Gallup poll, The Hill was talking about this. Young American men are lonelier than in other countries. Did you know that? That about 25% of American men under 35 feel lonely, even with a donut. And that's more than other countries. Only the country of Turkey is a little bit lonelier. But don't worry, because Meta has their AI digital friend that's available now. So you don't need human beings with flesh and blood and the ability to touch you and affect your oxytocin. No, you need a Meta AI digital friend. If I were lonely, I would probably try it. I'd try it. How many of you would give it a try? Because it's not like it's illegal or anything, and it's not expensive. So would it really be the worst thing in the world if you had a digital friend? I tried a digital friend when AI was brand new, and it was just too lame. It didn't remember you the next time. But they've fixed a lot of that stuff. So I don't know. Maybe get yourself a digital friend. It's going to work for some of you. So Microsoft keeps announcing all these upgrades to their version of AI. And I don't know about you, but I don't understand any of them. They're all technical. It's all stuff like, well, the agentic this or that is now able to interact with the API of the overextended transistor. It's just a bunch of words. And I'm thinking to myself, if everything that Microsoft does, you can only understand if you're an engineer, it's not really going to replace the engineer, because somebody needs to know what all of those jargon words mean and then put them into practice. So I don't know if AI is going to replace as many people as we think. I did see some stories of some company who replaced 40% of their workload. But we also saw a story of a company that did the same thing and then had to add back their humans because the AI agentic stuff didn't work at all. So we'll see. I saw a video of Optimus the robots practicing household chores. It was doing stuff like open the cabinet and take a square of paper towel. And I was trying to imagine that in the real world. One of the tasks was take the bag of garbage and put it in the outdoor garbage bin. And it puts it in, and it's kind of overfilled, so it can't really close the top. What would happen if that robot were in the real world with humans? Well, I, I don't know what relationships you've ever been in, but no two people agree on what you should do if the garbage is overfilled. Sometimes I'll look at it and I'll say, oh, they tell you not to overfill the garbage because they might leave it. They threaten, if the garbage is overfilled, we'll just leave it. And I think, oh, that would be the giant pain in the ass. I'd have to, drag that thing up the driveway again. So if it's me, I might say, I'll just put this extra bag of garbage in the garage in the corner and wait till next week. If I had a woman in the house, she would say, you wimp, put it in there and just, jump on it and squeeze it. And what about filling the dishwasher? Have you ever had this conversation? My God, you don't know how to fill the dishwasher. You can fit 10 more dishes in there. All right. So as I was watching the poor robot do these household chores, I was mentally running through my head how much how much criticism they're going to get for doing it wrong, because there's no way to do it right. There's no human way that any two people are going to fill a dishwasher the same way or take the garbage out the same way. There's just no way in the real world. So that'll be fun. Anyway, according to Newsmax, gas prices are going to dip to their lowest level since 2021, adjusted for inflation, for Memorial Day, and might stay low for the summer. So they're talking about an average gas price of $3.08 for Memorial Day, or twice that if you're in California. So that's good. Good news on oil. Well, Trump had a good new attack plan on this Autopen Biden stuff. So Trump is saying that Biden was not for open borders. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of true, isn't it? If you looked at his history and you looked at what he said, he would always act like he wasn't for open borders. And they would say stuff like, if only you Republicans would pass this irrelevant border bill, well, then we could close the border. So if you looked at his rhetoric, he was not for open borders. But if you look at what happened, it would be as if he just loved open borders and letting in millions of people. So was whoever was running the Autopen, the thing that actually signed things because Biden didn't, is it possible that Biden thought he was doing everything he could to close the border, because that's what maybe his staff told him, while the Autopen person was like, I'm opening this border all the way? If that's true, that's a huge scandal. And I think Trump has accurately found the leverage point, because it's one thing to complain generically. Well, he wasn't in good shape. I don't think he was even aware of the Autopen. That doesn't really move the needle, because you say to yourself, yeah, but did it matter? I mean, wasn't it doing all the things he wanted to do? If it was compatible with his own policies, then no big deal. But if it were the opposite of what he said was his policy, and it was signing it and putting things into law, well, then you've got a little bit of a bigger problem, don't you? So I think Trump has accurately found the weak spot in their argument there. Speaking of weak spots, the new Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson book talking about Biden's defective brain, it's officially out now. And according to Jake Tapper, Biden ran for re-election because he spent most of 2023 convinced that Trump was going to jail. Can you imagine the Democrats' feeling when they did absolutely everything they could to put Trump in jail, and it just didn't work? And then he became president. Do you think they were afraid? Do you think they were afraid of retribution when they put together this gigantic lawfare political machine to jail one person? And that one person became the next president of the United States. I'd be a little worried about retribution. So that they actually thought they were winning and that Trump was going to go to jail. I kind of thought maybe he would too, I have to admit. It looked dicey, didn't it? How many of you thought Trump was going to go to jail? I thought it was at least 50%, but I wasn't sure. So, let's see what else we have. According to Jake Tapper, also, Hunter Biden was driving the decision-making for the family, like a chief of staff. Now, does that mean he was only making decisions for the family? Or does it mean that Hunter Biden was running the country and he was actually the power behind the Autopen? It's a little unclear. But Jake says he was almost like a chief of staff. Now, that's a pretty big scandal if it's true. I don't know how you would demonstrate that was true exactly. But Charlemagne, you all know Charlemagne, the host of The Breakfast Club. Is that the name of his podcast? It's a pretty big deal. Yeah, so Charlemagne would be associated with the political left. And he says that CNN and Jake Tapper were complicit in the Biden cover-up, which I feel like is the, pretty common opinion at this point. It's really ballsy of them to be promoting a book about the cover-up when the people who are looking at it say, but aren't you the cover-up? I'm pretty sure you're the cover-up. Even Jon Stewart was mocking the whole book process. He was mocking more how much they were promoting the book as opposed to telling us what was in it. Because the funny part is, Jon Stewart said, isn't the news what you're supposed to be telling us? So it's a news person who is sitting there saying, in 20 days, I'll show you what was in my book. And the audience is sitting there thinking, you mean the news? Why are you going to wait 20 days to tell us the news? You're literally sitting at the news desk where news should be dispensed. Why are you telling us we have to wait and buy your book to find the news? You're literally the news guy. Tell us the news. So I think that was a funny Jon Stewart attack. I don't know if you've been watching Mark Halperin. I guess he would be a podcaster / journalist. So he's he was talking to Joe Scarborough, and trying to hold his feet to the fire, so to speak. And Scarborough wasn't backing down. He said that he personally never saw those days when Biden was having a bad day. And he said that Biden would call him in the middle of the night. And because he went to bed early because of the show. So it wasn't the real middle of the night. And that they would have long talks about policy. And it was all totally coherent. And he'd have lunch with him. And it would be completely coherent. Well, we only have him to believe, but it's possible. It's actually possible that Biden made sure he was in good shape before he ever talked to Scarborough. Maybe. It's not completely impossible. What is impossible is that Scarborough didn't notice what the rest of us noticed, that publicly he looked halting and would forget things and, wander around and stuff. He never noticed that? Or did he say to himself, well, every time I talk to him, he's fine, so that's the part that counts? It's not my job to defend Scarborough, but it's a little bit hard to imagine he didn't notice what all the rest of us noticed. Now, one of the things that Mark Halperin is doing on his podcast is he's going hard at the media for ignoring the story. But he also tells a story of, if I think I have the date right, where he was at a book event in 2017, and he observed with his own eyes Biden essentially falling apart mentally. And he said to himself at the time, oh my God, Biden's just completely gone. And I don't remember Mark Halperin telling us that. Do you? So every single day, Halperin is doing a podcast where he's talking about people who didn't tell you the obvious, that Biden was defective. At the same time, he's telling us that he was completely aware of it in 2017. I don't remember one single time that Mark Halperin told us that Biden was mentally incapable. So watching the media try to grapple with the fact that they didn't tell you the opposite or didn't tell you on time, and trying to assign the blame to other people is a little bit weird. The fact that they're getting away with it all is crazy. And then here's my favorite part. Why is it that so many people in the media were and not only the media, but the Democrats that had any power or in the circle, why is it that they were gaslighting us that Biden's brain was fine? And the answer is because they thought Trump would be a dangerous Hitler-like character. Why did they think that he would be a dangerous Hitler-like character? It's because of their other gaslighting. So the reason that they couldn't tell you the truth about Biden's brain is that they weren't telling you the truth about Trump. If Trump had been a ordinary politician in their minds, they might have said, well, okay, we give up. Our guy is mentally incompetent. It can't be that worse to have the other guy in charge. But they decided he was actually Hitler. Once you decide he's Hitler, you're willing to put absolutely anybody else in charge so that you don't get Hitler, which in a way you could put yourself in that same position. If you believed that Trump was Hitler, if you actually believed it, you might be in favor of the mentally incompetent guy in the Autopen. It wouldn't be crazy. But then, so there's a gaslighting about his brain that's based on the gaslighting about him being Hitler, which is based on, do you know the third part? Based on the gaslighting that the Fine People hoax was not a hoax. And he actually, he based his campaign on the Fine People gaslighting, which supported the He's Hitler gaslighting, which created the Biden's brain is fine gaslighting, which they're now trying to distract us with the Biden has prostate cancer gaslighting, which, I believe is true, but maybe they knew about it sooner. So do you think that the news, which is, trying to show some honesty and finally they're coming clean about their mistakes, do you think they're going to say what I just said? That it was a 3-layer gaslighting? Because there's no way you get to Biden's brain is fine without Trump is Hitler, and you don't get to that without he called those Nazis fine people. They're all related. Their own lies created an inability for them to tell the truth when it got to the third level of gaslighting. How much of the public would understand what I just said? Like, I know all of you do because you follow the the ins and outs. But the average person in the world just has no idea that it was a 3-level gaslight. Really, the gaslight of all gaslighting. It was pretty amazing. Anyway, according to Rasmussen, 72% of people say the cover-up of the Biden decline is a serious scandal. But who do they blame for it? Just the Bidens, probably. Do you think the public, I mean, maybe the public says, oh, Ron Klain, or maybe they say, oh, Hunter Biden, you're like the chief of staff. But none of that's going to matter in the future. The next candidate they run is not going to be related to Hunter Biden or Ron Klain, probably. So, even the Democrats are acting like, oh yeah, it was a big problem, and the book is getting a lot of attention. So this is one of those rare cases where both sides are, Biden, look what you did to us, Biden. Of course, they're ignoring the first 2 layers of gaslighting that caused the whole thing. But let me give you a little test. If you're new to my podcast, you're going to be amazed because a lot of my people can guess the answer to questions before they hear the question. They know the answer. Go. What is the answer to the question that I've not yet asked? And you have to be within 2% or 2 basis points. 25, 25, 25. Oh, look at that. You're correct. The question was, what percentage, according to Rasmussen, don't consider it likely the media were complicit in covering it up? 27% of people polled, 27% do not believe the media was complicit in covering it up. That's the whole story. Come on. The whole story is that the media was complicit in covering it up. If the only people who were complicit were the politicians, I mean, that would be a big story, but it would also be business as usual. Oh, of course, the politicians are lying and spinning and, using hyperbole. But the fact that the media were their little lapdogs in covering it up, that's the story. That's the whole story. That's the big part. That's the part you have to worry about for next time. Because you already knew that the politicians would lie about whatever the next thing is. That's not news. But did you know that the news would just literally make shit up and tell you that you weren't seeing what you were seeing? That's the story. So the fact that the media has convinced 27% of viewers that they were not the problem is pretty exciting. Well, we also learned from the book that Biden and his staff held a fake town hall in the fall of 2024 just to get some clips that they could use for their campaign. So they didn't want to take a chance with a real town hall. So he never had a real town hall as part of his campaign. But they thought, all right, we'll do a fake one where they go to Delaware where everybody loves them and it's all his supporters. And they'll just do a bunch of fake questions with answers he would already have. So that all he really had to do is essentially read the answers they'd given to him. And he couldn't do enough things right that they could even get some clips they could use. They ended up shit canning the entire thing because he was so feeble that he didn't say a single thing they could put on a clip and with their multiple cameras or anything. And then they blamed it on poor lighting. It's just layers of lies, just one lie on top of another. Oh, it was the lighting. And then poor Whoopi Goldberg and the ladies of the View, they're trying to deal with the fact that they've been essentially revealed as absolute morons in front of the world. So the way Whoopi's decided to try to deal with it is, she says, "But my question is, why is this important to know now? What difference at this point does it make? It just seems to me, we got a lot of stuff to be concerned about at the moment. So we should just ignore that we've been gaslit for 4 years with a mentally incompetent guy as our leader. It's like, let's just ignore that." Well, here's the answer, Whoopi. This is telling us who to trust next time. If your news source said he was perfectly fine, and then you learned that he wasn't, and that every viewer knew he wasn't, well, are you gonna trust that news source next time? So generally, I don't like living in the past either. So I get the idea about ignoring the past and focusing on the future, but you can't do it this time. This time, you really need to kind of understand what the hell happened and who was pushing the Autopen and who is in charge of the country. Those are kind of big questions, Whoopi. So, Whoopi, you guys are morons. The whole world knows it now, except for 27%. Apparently, the Target store, meaning the store named Target, their sales fell sharply in the first quarter, and they think it'll be down for all of 2025. Some people are saying that's because of the MAGA boycott. Do you think that's why? I don't feel like there was a giant Republican boycott of Target. Are any of you boycotting Target? Because they did make some changes. Didn't they get rid of their DEI, or they tried, and they got rid of their trans child clothing? Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily the boycott, but it's hard to tell. Well, if you don't know it already, Representative Nancy Mace was quite bold this morning. So there's a backstory here that I didn't know about, which apparently her ex-fiance, this Patrick Bryant, is being accused of taking secret videos of women having sex with him and being naked. And one of those women was Nancy Mace when they were together. And she's decided to go after him hard. And although she's mentioned it many times, she decided to show video in Congress, very large pictures, that included her own naked body. Now it's, grainy black and white, but it's still her naked. And remember, I've told you that freedom from embarrassment is a superpower? Well, there it is. There it is. This is something you couldn't do unless you had come to grips with the question of embarrassment. And she's decided that, and she's already done this, so it's already done this morning. She pushed through the risk of embarrassment and all the things that will happen, and there's going to be, it'll follow her forever, etc., and did it anyway. Now, that's how you take control from the alleged rapist and alleged photo taker. It's where you basically take your power back. And it all starts with not being afraid of embarrassment. Now, there's another thing that I teach you, which is the difference between wanting something and deciding. She has been wanting for some time that this gentleman, gets some legal treatment. I guess he's walking free and even suing some people who have accused him. But she's clearly moved to deciding. When you move from wanting something to happen to deciding it's going to happen, you do this. And I'm so impressed at the bravery and, the just the, I guess, the mental strength this required. Very impressive. Now, I don't know if it'll get the results she wants. I think she's trying to figure out some way to hold him accountable in a legal sense. I don't know the details there, but holy cow! Um, I don't know what else to say. The freedom from embarrassment, the power that she took back, the deciding over wanting, just all very impressive. So we'll see where this goes. Well, the big old Trump and Republican budget bill is sufficiently complicated that the public won't know what's in it. Now, if you were the Democrats, how would you treat that? If you knew the public would not be able to look at the details of the bill and really understand it, what would you do? Well, the first thing you do is say that it's stealing from the poor to give money to the rich. And you would just say that every day. Taking it from the poor and giving it to the rich, taking it from the poor and giving it to the rich. And that's what they're doing. And by the way, that will totally work. It's the Hitler approach. Because what Hitler would do is just tell a big lie and then just repeat it endlessly. As long as the media was willing to show that story, they can do that. Now, they may not be completely wrong, by the way. Because they can make their case based on the details of the bill, because they would say it cuts Medicaid. What would the Republicans say? Would the Republicans say it cuts Medicaid? No. They would say, you can have Medicaid. You just have to get off the couch and either do some public service or go to school or get a job if you're able-bodied. But that's complicated, and not everybody will do it. So then that gives the Democrats the ability to say, hey, you're cutting Medicaid. And nobody's going to listen to the Republicans when they say, no, you can still have all the Medicaid you want. You just have to make sure you're putting back into society something, because society is paying for your medical care. Nobody's going to hear that. And they say it's cutting food aid. I don't even know what the details of that are. I read about this all the time. I have no idea what the cuts in food aid are even about. But is it the same thing? Do you have to at least try to get a job, or you can't get food aid? I don't know. And then it said there would be tax cuts for the wealthy. Well, are there? Apparently, there were some tax levels that are going to expire, which were a little bit better for the wealthy than what it would automatically return to, just because it's going to time out. So is that a tax cut for the wealthy? Well, it's complicated. You could argue it is. But also, what's the right tax rate for the wealthy? Well, I don't know. Now, Trump is pushing for this. He wants to get this done before the midterms, and because it would look like a Republican win. And he says he's going to support primary challenges to Republicans who might oppose it. So I guess it includes eliminating taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits, or getting rid of taxes on those as well, and boosting the child tax credit. Now, that would all be good, except the Congressional Budget Office, who we don't necessarily trust to do this right, says that in 2027, the bill's combination of tax cuts and spending cuts would decrease the household resources, whatever resources are, of the bottom 10% of households by 2%, while increasing resources for the top 10% of households by 4%. So that would support the Democrat idea that it's good for the rich and bad for the poor. But they had to go down to the bottom 10% of households and decreased it by 2%. Would anybody notice that? Even if you're poor, would you even notice if your resources went down by 2%? I don't know if that's even noticeable. So, and I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea because it's complicated. So, as I've told you many times, whenever there's complication, there's basically fraud and deceit and gaslighting and everything else. Now, what do you think this budget would do to the national debt, which is the only thing that matters? Because if we don't get the national debt down, none of the rest of that matters. You're not going to get tax on tips because you're not even going to have a restaurant. There won't be any place to even work to get a tip. So the one most important thing, by far the most important thing, by 100 to 1, the most important thing is that the new budget decreases spending enough so that our deficit and debt situation and the national reputation is preserved. So how does it do it? It doesn't. It blows the debt up like a lot. It's not even close. So if you were to rate this bill, you would say all the little shit that doesn't matter. Oh, I like it. The little shit. I like that there's no tax on tips. I like it. But if you looked at the one and only thing that matters, which is what does this do to the national debt, it absolutely destroys it. So Republicans have failed as hard as you can possibly fail. Trump is failing as hard as you can possibly fail. In fact, so hard I would have to say his presidency will be judged a complete failure if this budget is passed. Is that too strong? You know me. I've been a huge supporter of the president since 2015. But I'm going to say it again because I don't want you to miss it. If this budget passes, it's going to blow up the debt situation, and I would consider the Trump presidency a complete failure because it would destroy the country. And there's no question about it, by the way. Nobody would argue with what I just said. Do you think they're going to do it anyway? It looks like it. Sure looks like it. Can we survive it? I have no idea how we could. So if Trump wants to destroy his legacy completely, he's on a path to do that. And I don't give one fuck about anything else he did. I don't care about his clever tweets. I don't care that he stopped a war in a country I don't live in. I don't care that he bolstered the, well, I do care that he did the border, but it's nowhere near as important as this. Not even close. Although maybe it is. But if you don't get the budget right, that is a failed presidency and a failed country, and there's no way around it. Now, if he's got some secret plan to switch to crypto or make so many robots that it all works out, I don't know. You could try. But at the moment, let me say as clearly as possible, it looks like a completely failed presidency. Now, if he can answer that question, how is it that you're going to blow up the deficit and call yourself a Republican? I'm open to listening to it. Could he change my mind? Maybe. But he'd have to say something I'd never heard before, because everything I've heard so far would suggest complete failed presidency, which is weird, because I'm not sure it had to happen that way. I'm just not sure it had to happen that way. So that's tragic. According to Neuroscience News, propaganda and persuasion are core civic skills in the digital age. So I guess they're proposing that students learn the basics of propaganda. And there's a Professor Crick who's got a book called Propaganda, the Basics. And he says it's not merely a tool of deception, but should be understood as a fundamental aspect of mass communications. Yes. So everything that's sort of in the news and on social media, especially if you see it more than once, is propaganda, almost always. But the faster way to say that is that your opinions are assigned to you. Once you realize that people don't come up with their own opinions, you'll see it everywhere. And you'll never be the same. Yeah, every time you see it, you'll be like, wait a minute, your opinion sounds like exactly what I just heard on MSNBC. Is that a coincidence? Or is MSNBC so right? No, it wouldn't matter what they said. The people who watch it would repeat that as their own opinion. So once you learn that your opinions are assigned to you, and not just other people's opinions, but yours too, then you understand the world a lot better. Well, here's a good example of that. Representative LaMonica McIver. So she's the representative who may have put some hands on an ICE federal agent. They say striking. I don't know if she struck anything, but she was arrested for striking a federal agent at the ICE facility. With her other representatives were there to protest and do some oversight. Now, I think I heard her say that after the noise went down, they gave them a tour of the facility, and if they wanted another tour, they could just schedule it. So none of it was necessary. It was just completely unnecessary that anybody got a physical because they just had to schedule it. There was nothing stopping them from having a tour of the facility. But here's where the propaganda comes in. I don't know if this is happening only to me, or is it happening to you as well? But almost every day, if I go on the X platform, I'll see video of overweight black women having fistfights. And sometimes it's on a cruise ship, and sometimes it's at a Target store, and sometimes it's at a fast food place, but almost every day. And, obviously I know that this does not apply to all black women or all black people or all anybody. Like it's, out of context. But if you see enough of it, and then there's a story in the news of this LaMonica McIver striking an ICE agent, aren't you going to think she probably struck the ICE agent? Like, isn't your brain going to connect all these videos you've been watching, and you're saying, "Oh, overweight black woman, they're punchy." Now, even though there's no statistical, I'm not aware of any statistical evidence that that's true. Your brain doesn't know the difference. If you've been inundated with this one kind of image, and then suddenly there's something in the real world that reminds you of it, that's propaganda. So we all have to be a little bit careful of taking what we've seen on social media, which has nothing to do with this one person. She hasn't been, LaMonica McIver was not fighting on a cruise ship. She was not fighting in McDonald's. She was not fighting in Walmart. None of those videos have anything to do with her. She's her own individual person. So, but your brain will say, I'm seeing a pattern here. And that would not be fair to LaMonica McIver. Now, I don't know if she's, guilty or not guilty. I don't have an opinion on that. I thought the videos were a little indistinct, but it's a good example of where propaganda, you have to be really careful, because it would be so easy for social media to just assign you an opinion. Well, there's another example of the same thing I saw in the McDonald's. So be careful about that. Meanwhile, the governor of Maryland Wes Moore. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't Wes Moore the guy that George Clooney thinks would be a good president? And was that just because Clooney wants to, pick a black guy because it seems right to him? But anyway, the story on him is that he was pushing for reparations, but he's decided to torpedo that because the state's in a fiscal crisis. Yes, they too have a deficit. They got a credit downgrade, and they've got illegal alien problem. They've got violent crime problem. They've got businesses are leaving the state, and potential for a lot of new taxes and a worsening power crisis. So the state's going to hell. At the same time, he was going to push for reparations. So I think it was a good choice to back off from the reparations. But I've got a feeling that George Clooney might be the worst picker of candidates of all time. I think George Clooney is going to have to write another editorial. Okay, it turns out that Wes is not quite the leader that I hoped he was. So I wouldn't worry about him becoming president. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Do I have the right name? I want to make sure I got the right name. That is who Clooney mentioned, right? Well, let's talk about Senator Ted Cruz. Yesterday, he introduced a federal Universal School Choice Act. Now, it hasn't been voted in, but the idea would be that it would allocate up to $10 billion annually in dollar-for-dollar federal tax credits for people and businesses that contribute to nonprofit scholarship granting organizations. So that would be alternative schools. So, but here's what caught my attention. So Senator Cruz says, quote, "School choice is the civil rights issue of the 21st century." Doesn't that sound exactly like something I once said? If I didn't say it, I sure thought it a bunch of times, because I always look at, Black America in particular, and I look at, what their school options are, and I think to myself, if you don't fix that, are you really even trying? And and I don't know any way to fix it, because the what is it? The teachers' unions are so strong that they kind of they're keeping things the way they are, and they don't want to have any school choice, because then they would have less power, I guess. So yeah, I do think school choice is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. I think he's right about that. Have you ever met a smart person who was not as successful? Unless they were a drug addict or something. It seems to me that, regardless of, race or demographics or income or anything else, that there's a certain level of smart that they all succeed. I'm thinking of a few cases specifically where the intelligence just carved right through problems that other people would have thought was a brick wall. And they just went right through it because they were unusually smart. But I agree with Dave Chappelle, who humorously says that because he's rich, he has more in common with rich white people than poor anybody. Now, he does the comedy version of that, but I'd say that smart has the same effect. That the smartest black person and the smartest white person have more in common with each other than either of them do with the dumbest people of any color. So, and we just ignore that like it doesn't matter. It's the most predictable part of life that smart people do better. There's nothing more predictable than that. And we act like it's this whole host of other things Not really. Smart people are doing pretty well. But if we fix schools, it should help a whole bunch of people who are, maybe below the smartest level, and all they need is a little boost. That would make a big difference. So I'm all for it. Apparently, Secretary Hegseth has ordered a comprehensive view of Biden's botched Afghanistan withdrawal. Do we really need that? Or is that just lawfare? I feel like we should know more about that. I worry about Mark Milley. And if I were the Secretary of Defense, I would want to know if I still employed somebody who was a complete moron and ruined things there and got people killed. So yeah, I guess we have to look into it, even if you think you'd like to put it in your rearview mirror. You probably need to know. Probably need to know what went wrong. CNN is reporting that Israel is, quote, making preparations to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. To which I say, that's not news. It would be news if they actually struck the nuclear facility. It's never news when a military prepares for the most obvious things that the military might be asked to do. And the most obvious thing that the Israel military might be asked to do is attack the Iran nuclear facilities. So when you say that they're preparing for it, I say that's just their job. Of course they're preparing. It doesn't tell you anything about whether they're going to do it. I would say it's probably a coin toss, maybe a 50-50, that they would actually do it. And, maybe that's just part of the propaganda so that Iran feels a little more pressure. But yeah, the United States, have you seen these stories before? It'll be stuff like the U.S. is preparing a military option against Greenland, to which I say, of course they are. Do you know what else they have a military option for? Everything. Probably not Canada, but yeah. I mean, if there's any chance at all that they would be asked to do something, of course they've got it. What about Panama? Now, it turns out we didn't need to get, militaristic with Panama, but do you think the military prepared? Do you think they prepared for a military action in Panama? Well, I hope so. That would be exactly their job, to prepare, even if they're not asked to do it. According to Arab News, I don't know how accurate that is, but the U.S. expects Russia to make an offer to Zelensky for ending the war. Now, I can only laugh when I hear that. What kind of offer do you think Putin's going to make to end the war? It's going to be so outrageously one-sided that we're just going to look at it and laugh. He doesn't want to end the war. If Putin wanted to end the war, it would have been ended a long time ago. He obviously wants to keep doing what he's doing and grind them down as long as it takes, and keep making gains there one way or the other. So I'm not going to hold my breath and wait for this awesome offer from Putin. It's either going to never happen, which is pretty likely, or it's going to be hilariously ridiculous. The offer will be, well, number one, Zelensky has to take off his clothes and run around in circles in Moscow. It's going to be completely, untenable things. So look for that. If it happens at all, it'll be hilarious. Lockheed Martin is pretty happy that Trump is going to do the Golden Dome, which will be a layered defense to safeguard the homeland from nuclear attacks and, I suppose, other attacks. What do you think of that? Do you think we have the technology to keep out nuclear attacks? Well, I would say that if we built a golden dome, and I don't, obviously I'm not a military expert, but I'll just speak from common sense. Doesn't it seem like all of our major enemies could penetrate any defense? Now, maybe they have to put a nuclear submarine right off the coast so that there's not enough time for the Golden Dome. Maybe they have to, shoot multiple fake ones so the Golden Dome uses up all its ammo at the fake ones before the real ones come in. But doesn't it feel defeatable? I would worry a little bit if we got too calm. It's like, I guess we can push these guys because we've got nukes and we've got a golden dome. They can never touch us with our golden dome. But you know who else has a golden dome? Trump. It's called his hair. Anyway, according to the post-millennial, Trump's approval has surged to 55% after his Middle East trip. That's according to Insider Advantage poll. 55% would be pretty good. Now, I wouldn't expect it to stay there because it's going to depend on the budget and everything else. But there it is. In other news, Australia is committing financial suicide. You're not even going to believe this. So this is an idea that in the U.S. It gets kicked around every once in a while, but it never gets beyond getting kicked because it's so stupid. But Australia, it looks like they've decided to do it. I don't think it's a done deal, but they're moving toward taxing unrealized financial gains for people who have over $3 million in their account. Now, in the United States, we get taxed on realized financial gains. So if I hold a stock for more than a year and then I sell it for more than I bought it, I think at the moment, I think I'd pay a 20% tax. Now that's a realized gain. I made a bunch of money, and then I paid a percentage of that in tax. No problem. I don't have a complaint with that at all. But if you were in Australia and this turns into law because they're pretty serious about it, if your account did well, they would tax it while it's just sitting there in your account before you even sold it. And then if it goes down in value, well, too bad. They already got their part. And the nature of investments is that they go up and down. They don't just go up. I suppose if they only ever went up, this would be a workable idea. But in a world where stocks go up and down, can you imagine being taxed just because it happened to be up on the day that you were required to pay taxes? The Australians, they're just trying to destroy their own country as hard as they can. I mean, they're not trying as hard as we are. Or the budget deal should destroy the United States pretty thoroughly. But that was just so stupid. In other news, this sounds so dangerous that it's funny. There's a mysterious bacteria not found on Earth that's growing in China's space station, according to The Bite. And it's well adapted to off-planet life. I guess samples taken from China's Tiangong space station. It's got this new mysterious microbe that hasn't been seen on Earth. And doesn't that sound like a movie that you've seen? It just sounds exactly like the first 10 minutes of sci-fi. Chang, come over here. I've just we've discovered a mysterious bacteria that has never been found on Earth. It was made in the Wuhan lab in space. Nothing good can come from that. It's probably already evolved into some kind of a monster that's carved into their bodies and killed all the members of the space station by now. But don't worry, Pfizer already has a shot for it. Yeah, don't worry. Pfizer's got you covered. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the stupid news for today. I'm going to talk to the locals people privately. For the rest of you, hope you enjoyed. Come back tomorrow, same time, same place. And locals, I'll be private with you in 30 seconds. If